Good morning and welcome to our Fireside Chat with Neil Parsons and Natasha Chrysaffi. Today we'll be sharing our top 4 predictions for the tax and accounting industry in 2025. I'm Louise Prophet, I'm Key Accounts Director here at Wolters Kluwer Tax and Accounting in the UK. Neil, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Lou. Morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Neil Parsons. I'm Managing Director for Wolters Kluwer Tax and Accounting in the UK and Ireland.
And Natasha?
Hi everyone, I'm Natasha Chrysaffi. I am Senior Director of Product Management here at Wolters Kluwer Tax and Accounting Europe.
So just before we kick off with the questions, I'd love to invite all of our participants today in the audience to add any questions that they have via the meeting chat that you should see at the bottom of your screen, and then we'll come back to these at the end of the meeting. So, Neil, let's start on the topic of AI. How do you see AI transforming the role of accountants over the next few years?
Morning, Lou. Thanks for that. Nice, meaty question to kick us off. Look, I think overall, whilst the core principles of accountancy will remain, like our profession's going to evolve and embrace technology incredibly over not just 2025, but over the short period of the next 2 or 3 years, right? I think embracing technology is not a new thing. Embracing AI might well be, but embracing technology allows us to add greater value to our organizations and clients, right? So I think it's set to significantly transform the role of accountants in a number of ways, really. We talk a lot about AI, don't we? We hear it a lot at the moment in the market, and it's definitely the thing everybody's talking about. I think that the key thing to remember with AI is what it's used for and what it's possibly not used for as well, right? So, lots of traditional tasks such as data entry and invoice processing and reconciliation, I think that'll become increasingly automated, and it's going to allow us to focus on more strategic activities. So AI is incredible tooling, an incredible skill set to analyze large data sets really quickly and accurately. So I feel as though the AI will help us embrace that and help us provide insight into the data to make more informed decisions and help with strategic planning. No doubt we're seeing a lot of that technology in lots of areas of our workflows at the moment. Real-time reporting is one that I think AI can really facilitate and help enable businesses to make quicker adjustments and respond to the market changes more effectively. I also think that it will transform our industry quite widely in our client advisory roles. So with more routine tasks being automated, right, accountants can shift towards more advisory roles. Again, that's nothing new. We've all talked about how we want to spend more time in advisory and less time in the mundane. But being able to automate the routine tasks is definitely going to help provide a much more strategic guidance and allow our customers and allow our industry to provide more personalized financial planning for the clients rather than a little bit more of a broad brush approach. So I think there's loads of real great use cases for AI. I think it'll also help our customers and the accountants in the UK and Ireland and not wider to develop new skills in technology and data analysis, so that will help us to effectively work alongside the AI tools as well. So I think there's a lot of cool things happening in 2025 around AI.
Yeah, definitely. Now, with every cool thing, it throws up some challenges. So, what do you see as some of the potential challenges our accountants might face when they adopt AI technologies?
Good question, Lou. I think I don't necessarily think it's always the technology which throws up the challenges. So if we look back in our history and we look at customers who move software solutions or move workflows or change the way they work, quite often the biggest challenge that we have is the resistance to change. So I think there's probably quite a cultural resistance within a number of firms and within the market who are hesitant to adopt AI, and I think that could be due to fears that the robots are going to take over,
Mhm.
and we're gonna replace everybody's job, and it's Judgment Day, or whether it's sort of skepticism about the technology's reliability. We hear a lot, around automation and data ingestion, and actually how accurate is this, and how much can I believe in the data which I'm being given? Am I still going to need to check all this anyway? And therefore, does it render it a little obsolete? So I think the biggest challenge we'll have definitely is the resistance to change. As I said before, if we think about changing any piece of software or changing any process, is very often the change curve and the resistance to change which can stymie that, more so than the technology that we bring into the market, right? So navigating these changes will require quite careful planning. No doubt there'll be investment in training and commitment to maintaining a balance between the technology and the human expertise, because we all didn't go to university and train to become an accountant and pass our exams to let the computers take over, right? So I think that's a big part of it. I think aside to that, of course, I mentioned a minute ago about sort of reliance and trusting the accuracy. With increased reliance on AI, I think our customers need to ensure that sensitive financial data is protected against breaches and misuse, and navigating those complex data privacy regulations is something we've not had to think about before, or necessarily as much. So I firmly believe that will be on everybody's mind, and it'll come with a definite challenge. There may be some skills gaps. We talked about, or I talked a second ago about potentially some investment in training, right? So do we need additional training to effectively use these tools? That requires investment, it requires upskilling, and again, an adaptation to new technology. Integrating things with existing systems, there's on-premise systems, there's cloud-based systems, there's APIs, there's implementing these AI solutions could also be quite difficult if they don't seamlessly integrate with the current accounting software and systems. So potentially that could lead to some disruption in workflows. So I think with any project of that size, or any thoughts that people are giving to maybe implementing AI, it all comes back to the change curve of the people and the reticence to change in some respects, but also the quality of the data in the first place. Like, I'm hoping AI can clean everybody's data, and I'm hoping that it can make our lives easier, right? And it can help us automate some even more mundane tasks. But if the data in the first place isn't in great shape, then I don't know which robot can help with that.
Rubbish in, rubbish out.
Yeah, you're right, Lou, but there's a couple of other bits around that, isn't there? The rapid evolution of AI technology can outpace some of the regulatory frameworks. So, make it challenging for our customers to ensure compliance with the legal standards, ethical practices. AI is moving at such a pace that I wonder how everyone's going to keep up.
Yeah, interesting. You talk about skill sets, Natasha. As firms start to adapt to this new world, what skills do you think are going to be most valuable for the accountants to begin to develop?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the things that Neil just spoke about are definitely gonna drive those skills. So, I mean, whilst the accountant can expect their software vendors to provide these AI-powered solutions for the applications that they have today, I think what you mentioned about the data, that is really key, the data readiness. So being aware of what you're putting into the system, keeping the data clean, means that the AI solution can give you back as good as your data is. Definitely a skill that needs to be considered. And then, along with AI, whilst software providers will develop these AI solutions, the accountant should still be aware of the other tools that are available, such as ChatGPT and Copilot, and how they're transforming the way we work, not necessarily with the things that you've studied to do along your accounting exams, but with more soft skills like writing copy and finding out about the market. I think another skill which raises its head when we're talking about AI and cloud software is cybersecurity. So, accountants being aware, having a solid understanding of those principles, including the data protection, risk management, and making sure that there's robust software solutions. Whilst that is, again, often a responsibility of the software provider, the accountant needs to have that responsibility for their practice as well. And I think, lastly, one that will never go away, and it's the one that we love the most, is the skill set when you're looking after your clients. That's not going to change. So clients will always look to accountants for guidance and the ability to communicate the complex financial information clearly. And that's a skill that things like ChatGPT may aid and help, but having that strong trustworthy relationship with the client is always going to be invaluable. Having an accountant who listens, understands the client's needs, provides that tailored advice, that's what builds the long-lasting relationship.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, in this fast-paced environment and all of this new skill set that's developing within practices, how do you think that accountancy practices are going to retain talent in such a competitive and fast-evolving environment as people become more skilled?
Yeah, and it is fast evolving. Like you're right, Lou. There's a lot going on in the industry at the moment. I think that the key to retaining talent in this environment is to leverage the technology so that you can provide productivity and employee satisfaction. Lots of advanced tools like AI-powered data analytics, having things cloud-based with automation will allow accountants to focus on more strategic, high-value tasks and reduce the repetitive manual work that can often lead to burnout. I think providing the access to the cutting-edge technology and, as Neil said, training employees on the use, it demonstrates an investment in their growth as well, and it's equipping them with the sought-after skills that they will need as their career progresses. And obviously, we all use cloud software. It gives that flexible work model. Different businesses have different work policies, but it does allow remote hybrid setups, which is often critical to retain talent. And by getting those tools into workflows, encouraging innovation, it keeps the firm modern and dynamic, and that appeals to more tech savvy professionals.
Yeah, definitely. So I suppose you're retaining talent, but you also want to evolve as a profession to attract the next generation of talent. So we talked about, skill sets and developing those within the practice, but there'll be fresh blood or new people who want to join the sector. How do you think the accounting profession can attract that next generation?
Yeah, I think again it's around embracing the technology. I think where the skills shift, it's important to emphasize like purpose-driven work. Exactly, what's the outcome and how can you get to the outcome in kind of the most efficient manner. Building flexible and diverse workplaces as well is important. The evolution around technologies like AI, blockchain, machine learning, it is reshaping accounting from the traditional number focused role to be a more strategic, analytical, advisory function. And that kind of shifts to professionals engaging in more high impact decision making, data analysis, financial forecasting, which often appeals to new talent interested in roles where they can contribute creatively and strategically, rather than sort of going in and starting on the mundane tasks. There's also, although in our industry we find regulation fun, so I will call it fun. There's lots of new fun things like ESG, environmental, social and governance, new reporting, ethics, and often these sorts of themes do align with the values of new professionals to the industry. They want to make a positive impact. And definitely around that environmental, social governance, there's lots of new things that they can get involved in. It ties in again with the continuous learning, I think, for this group of people. They want to be with the new things, evolving, learning, and embracing the tools that support with those. And I think, as a sideline to that, focusing on that kind of segment, the new professionals, that diversity, inclusion, mentoring programs, they all attract new talent, and firms that prioritize that sort of thing, especially mentoring, they create a welcome environment which fosters that belonging and career growth. And they're sort of transforming their practice into a tech-enabled, socially responsible firm, with diverse opportunities that will attract and retain the next generation of talent.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's a great point, Natasha. I think the industry's evolving so rapidly over the last few years, not just through the advent of technology, but post-COVID and the work anywhere attitude. I think we definitely need to be more cognizant of that fact. Lou, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit in something that out of the script, but Louise, you manage the top 10 firms in the UK, right? What are you seeing as a trend in AI in this part of the world?
So everything really. I think AI is a massive subject within the top 10 firms. It's something everybody's talking about in all different manners. So adoption of AI, but also when you talk about bringing new talent in as well, it's containing that energy within the larger firms, because, Copilot and Chat GPT are out there, and the next generation really are seeing this in their own lives, in their own home computing, and they think they can bring it into work. So they're challenging people who may have been within practice for many years, and obviously are ahead of the curve in terms of technology, but strategically everything has got a place and it's got a time, and it's got to be scoped out for the practice. So they're being pushed really by the next generation, being pushed by new clients who want to adapt, and obviously this change in the market perception, but they want to do it in a secure and controlled manner. So I think it is all about, the things that you've said. You've got to retain the talent, you've got to bring in new talent, you've got to evolve as a practice, and you've got to plan in terms of moving forwards, and it is all about the planning.
And we're definitely seeing more of a shift now, and more of a request in not just the large firms in the UK, but all the firms in the UK to leverage taking tax as a use case, to leverage data ingestion in the first place, but then also using AI and analytics to understand the output from the tax engine, and potentially what could have been used from a tax perspective, what could have been, what's missing from a tax return, what's the front and the back end of the process. We're seeing a lot of robotics and automation and AI at both ends, whilst having to keep. Natasha, we're going to coin that catchphrase that regulation is fun.
It's fun.
We love that. Right, we love that. We're excited about regulation, but
we are. We've all made a career out of it.
It's what you can put either side of it, right? And I think that's what's really interesting at the moment. How we can build workflows at the front end to shape our customers and clients' behavior, and then also what value we can get out of the data once we've got it. It's a really worthy exercise at the minute. It's really exciting.
Yeah, that whole management information piece, you know, it feeds from the compliance software, but it's not necessarily within the compliance software uniquely. So you're bringing information together from all parts of your business to display it in less of a flat format. And, you know, AI and all of these technologies can help you do that.
Yeah, that's great. And there's a good question in the chat there from Emma around, you know, whether there's a concern that the new talent coming through won't have the baseline knowledge if the computer's doing it for them, and their knowledge is diminished compared to our well-trained and well-honed colleagues in the market today. I think that's a really valid point, Emma. I think that I think the same can be said though. Years ago, when you would see new graduated students versus those that have been doing the job themselves for a number of years. You know, I think both Louise, myself, and Natasha have all worked in the accountancy software industry for such a long time that not such a long time, sorry, for some time now. That you know, the same thing could have been said when computerized bookkeeping solutions were made available. You know, in the early 2000s, late 90s, and then you know, is all of a sudden the ability to reconcile a 19-column 15-page cathedral book dead? Well, like, it should be dead as well, like, because there's a computer that can do that for us. But I think, you know, you're right, Emma. I think the baseline knowledge and the study can't be overtaken. We need to make sure we've got that core foundation of knowledge, but let's try and let AI and the technology do the mundane stuff for us. I'm sure I read somewhere the other day, I don't want AI to write my book for me. I want it to do the dishes and the washing, so I can concentrate on writing my book. And I think that's really valid, you know.
Yeah, it is valid as well. And you think about the different practices that we've all worked with, you know, over the past. Joining a practice is different in every instance. And, you know, you don't want to stick your greatest talent or your brightest star in those mundane tasks when you can adopt technology to pick that up, and you can, you know, fast track them on. But that key knowledge and that learning and the studies that go with it are still imperative to accountancy.
Yeah, great question, Anna. Thanks for that.
Brilliant. So I'm going to change the subject just slightly, and Natasha, onto a new topic of security, which again, you know, is one of the big things that we see from our customers. So what do you think are the top cybersecurity threats that are facing accountancy firms today?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots. If you Google it, you'll get an alarming list. But I'm just going to talk about kind of three. Nothing like a bit of scaremongering on a Tuesday morning, but it's real, and we should talk about it. So it may sound dramatic, but ransomware attacks are real. They involve encrypting a firm's data, which makes it inaccessible for use until that ransom is paid. Those cyber criminals will often target accounting firms because they know that you handle highly sensitive data that, if it's compromised, can be financially damaging, obviously, and to the firm's reputation. So that's a big one. One that we might be more familiar with is phishing scams conducted via email, often on the phone as well, through other social media. They attempt to trick employees into revealing their credentials so that they can gain access to data. The problem with that is that, once there has been a successful phishing attack, it does compromise trust and sort of reputation for the firm. And then the last one, which is probably a bit of a taboo, but there are cloud security risks. As firms transition to cloud-based solutions, they might face risks related to misconfigured cloud settings, weak access controls, other vulnerabilities in the cloud provider's infrastructure that you might not even realize what goes on beneath the bonnet of the software. All of those and many more that I didn't want to turn it into a horror show, but all of these can lead to downtime, potential data loss, financial loss, reputational damage, and sometimes penalties if sensitive data is breached.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think you scared anyone too much. We need to think about these things, and we need to think about how to handle them, because as you're right, as we move towards the next generation of the cloud world, the market could be flooded with technology, but you've got to make sure that all of those cybersecurity threats have been dealt with by the company that you're working with. And I think that's what accountancy firms will be looking for.
Yeah.
So just thinking about a topic that was big quite a few years ago now, I think it was pre-COVID, if we still mention pre-COVID times, and GDPR, it's still something, that's embedded within businesses. It has to be, because I think, the fines around that are absolutely huge if you're not looking after your data. So how do you see, global data privacy regulation, GDPR, affecting the responsibilities of the accountants in this case?
Well, it's another critical priority, isn't it? It's another thing on the list for the accountant, which has essentially redefined their responsibilities as well in their role. The role now extends beyond managing the finances, but they are, in a way, custodians of that sensitive personal data. As soon as the client shares it with them, they're tasked with safeguarding that information. And ensuring that it's compliant with very strict standards. There's a lot to GDPR, for example. It's not something that you can become an expert in overnight. And when the accountant is responsible for that, it will in turn mean that they're responsible for implementing strong data security measures that will be around not just the use of solutions like Wolters Kluwer, but also around how are they collecting the data? Are they using secure systems? Are those systems encrypting the sensitive information? But possibly more importantly, as accountants, are you ready to respond if there is a data breach? Do you have policies? Do you have the ability to move quickly to respond to those and to meet reporting requirements? Same with the cybersecurity, are the firms equipped to move and respond? I think, secondly, the accountant is often in a position where they're expected to support the client's compliance as well. So advising on data best practices, having the right systems so that the client isn't at risk of sharing their data in the wrong way. And it's really important to collaborate with secure solutions like our customers have today. Those secure solutions, especially the collaboration tools, enable the accountant to handle the data subject requests, the access, the deletion requests, and make sure that the data is handled transparently and securely. But when it's done well, which I know everyone on the webinar will be doing everything well, when that is done well, it does enhance the relationship with the client. It builds the client's trust. They know that they're using the systems and advising them in the right way, and it protects everyone from those risks.
So what steps do you think that the accountants can take then to ensure that client data remains secure? I know you've kind of touched on it, but I don't know if you've got any steps or recommendations for people.
Yes, I do. So the most important step is the business solutions. It's choosing a software provider that prioritizes cybersecurity to ensure data protection. First of all, data encryption capabilities are essential in a solution. That encryption secures the sensitive data when it's moving, but also when it's being stored. The provider that the accountant chooses should also support multi-factor authentication, have lots of controls around access so that the accountants can put permissions on for unauthorized access, etc. And as we discussed, the accountant should look for providers that are compliant with GDPR, PSD2, etc. Now, what we find at Wolters Kluwer is that enterprise software providers like us tend to have more robust security budgets, which allow them to invest in like cutting edge security tools and continuous monitoring systems. We tend to have specialized cybersecurity teams that monitor and address threats proactively, and they have robust, scalable infrastructures, which is really important with disaster recovery, making sure that there's high availability, to making sure that the data is secure, that there's a non-interrupted service, but also all of those, all that protection, all those firewalls around that architecture of the system is really important. So we see large firms selecting large vendors because we're aligned in that importance.
Yeah.
I can see that Crawford's asked a question or posed a thought around internal cybersecurity from misconfigured AI. Yeah, I mean, it's a totally valid point, Crawford. There is a risk around you putting sensitive company data into something like ChatGPT or having Copilot combing all over your work. Yes, definitely a risk around that. And I think from my experience talking to customers and at WK, every business has its own policy around that. And I think that it's important, again, for the accountant, that's a skill set that you know they need to kind of embrace and put those policies in place as to how their staff are using those tools.
Yeah, you spot on there, Natasha. I think I was asked almost the same question straight afterwards, or posed the same thought. You know, unlicensed ChatGPT. Think nothing of putting, you know, comments and prompts into that. You know, it's pretty dangerous stuff, really. It's sort of a bit of a hidden threat.
Yeah,
Isn't it,
I mean,
really? One which we
you're
should think about.
Sorry, Neil.
No, go on.
I was going to say, you know, if you're asking it like, how do I write an apology email to a colleague or something, like, you know, fine. But if you're saying, if Wolters Kluwer the revenue is blah blah blah, and we want to grow by X amount, like that, obviously is putting data into an engine that you might not want to have.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think, can you put a good question in there around, do we see the inclusion of blockchain methodology significantly enhancing data protection? I don't profess to be an absolute expert on blockchain, but I think the short answer is definitely yes. You know, I think one of the products which WK released this year is a blockchain-driven validate solution, which goes to the banks to do audit confirmations, and we see that technology being on the bleeding edge, really, in terms of protecting that data, but also be able to recall it a lot quicker. Natasha, I don't know if you've got anything else to add on that, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's around the storage being totally unidentifiable, isolated storage, so that when that data is coming back from the banks, it's the highest security, which is really important.
Yeah, good point, Cam.
I'm glad you mentioned the teams. Yeah, the teams that we've got at Wolters Kluwer, Natasha, because it does feel not even just like a full-time job, does it, security, as we move forward, which is why, you know, we build the way that we do as an organisation, and other practices need to be thinking about that as well.
And how quickly we can react. At Wolters Kluwer, with all the resource we have globally, we react, you know, in a nanosecond. I think the question for accountants when they're looking at a provider, not just of accountancy software, but of anything else that supports the practice, is to ask those questions of your provider. You know, what are your processes around cybersecurity, like products going offline? What's the uptime? How do you respond to threats? I think that's really important. Yeah,
it's one that we could talk on and on about, isn't it, really? But I'm going to move to something else a little bit different now in ESG, Neil, and you've both mentioned it, you know, when we're looking at talent and moving forwards and what the next generation and indeed our own generations are now thinking about. That's the future of the planet and how this world is evolving, really. So how do you think, Neil, the emphasis on ESG is going to impact our accountancy customers in their day-to-day roles?
Thanks, Lou. I think it's a couple of things here, really. First of all, I wonder how much the traditional accountancy practice in the UK today is either being asked about ESG, thinking about ESG, or is worried about it. I wonder if it's more a statement than a question, but you know, do we see ESG as being a thing for big companies and it's not something that, you know, the traditional high street firm needs to worry about, particularly maybe we don't have customers of that sort of size turnover that need to worry about ESG. And not to turn this into an exercise in tree hugging, but we should all definitely be worried about ESG, shouldn't we? You know, right? So I do think, though, that, I mean, the accountancy profession, be it the accountants in practice or maybe more at the moment, the accountants in our contemporaries in industry are increasingly tasked with integrating ESG metrics into financial reporting. I don't think that means necessarily just crunching the numbers, but also sort of collecting and analysing data related to environmental impact or social responsibility and government practices. So I think, for instance, accountants may need to start assessing the company's carbon footprint, evaluate labour practices across supply chains, and then have a real job of trying to translate that into some quantifiable metrics. So like it sounds quite scary on the outset, I think, really. You know, you need to now comply with ESG. What does ESG mean? What does that mean to my firm? What does that really mean to my customers? You know, I guess that we'll, as a profession, we'll take a more advisory role in the strategic planning of ESG. I think certainly we're certainly more expected to act as a strategic advisor, right? But that doesn't necessarily just mean the commercials. You know, do we need to start helping organisations identify risks and opportunities related to ESG factors? You might need to analyse the financial it's a mouthful, isn't it? Financial implications of transitioning to renewable energy sources or potential reputational risks associated with poor practices. So, you know, whilst that may not right now be in the mainstream, you know, accountancy practices, certainly our contemporaries in industry are really thinking about that at the top end of the larger firms. ESG is going to become a key concern for investors, definitely, customers and other stakeholders. So I think we need to be able to effectively communicate the organisation's ESG performance one way or another. So I don't know, in summary, really, the emphasis on ESG, will it reshape the accountant's role? I don't think it will reshape it, but I think it'll help change it from purely a financial focus, perhaps to one that encompasses a broader responsibility for sustainability and ethical governance. I mean, I don't know, as we navigate these challenges, you know, it's going to pose some opportunities, but it'll definitely pose some challenges. I suppose our role is to evolve and become more dynamic and impactful. And there's definitely a clear push, though, for sustainability in business practices. And no doubt our role in that, when I say our, you know, our profession's role in that is to align our services with those global trends and stay relevant and be part of it, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm seeing definitely a shift in the top 10 firms asking around ESG and asking around reporting. And quite interesting, obviously, from a Wolters Kluwer perspective, our ESG division being formed this year as well and set up. So,
yeah, that's right, Lou. You know, Wolters Kluwer traditionally had 4 pillars of the business. We've now got 5. One big division is corporate and ESG. So, yeah, that's, yeah, it's absolutely something that we talk about a lot. I mean, you've made a good point there. Do we feel that AI and sustainability are opposite subjects? ChatGPT uses 10 times the amount of energy compared to Google searches, yet we seem to be pushing both these subjects. How do we balance it? Yeah, it's a real good question. You're on fire this morning. Two good questions. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think they probably are at potential opposite ends of the spectrum. I guess, you know, a feeble response would be to say it's sort of our job to juggle everything, really, isn't it? As trusted advisors to our customers, and you know, on one hand we need to make sure we're saving the planet, and on the other hand we need to make sure we're doing everything 10 times quicker. So I haven't got a good answer for that, but it's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think adoption of ChatGPT was one of those big things, wasn't it? And that's one of the ones that I spoke about in the top 10 that is concerning, when people can load data in there that could be sensitive or private data. And it's about managing that as this, you know, a protocol for your own business moving forwards. You know, ultimately those tools are going to be the business's choice. Which ones they adapt and which ones they work with. It doesn't mean ChatGPT wouldn't be suitable for your personal life, but maybe not within a professional environment at the moment. As you know, it's good to see the chat where people are mentioning ChatGPT quite a lot.
Yeah.
It doesn't
It
actually
sounds
come
to
up
me
that
like,
much,
though,
really.
so we've got a product European product expert on the call here, and I wonder if we could find a product, Natasha, that was not only had the capabilities of ChatGPT but also was far more sustainable than ChatGPT. We might all be able to get to Mauritius for Christmas, you know.
I mean, what I would hope is that, I mean, ChatGPT is still a relatively immature product. It's not, you know, it's not been around. It's only been around a few years in mainstream. I will hope that there will be regulations, ESG regulations, that will force ChatGPT or similar to be more responsible, more sustainable, so that they can reduce that rather than making it worse.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, yeah, and they will be right. I suppose if everybody else has to comply to ESG, then so must ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah. Just going back to that ESG point then. So what are the key challenges, Neil? I think you touched on this slightly when you were talking about accountancy professionals, but key challenges in implementing the effective sustainability in accounting.
Yeah, Lou, I think it's pretty similar to what we said earlier on. You know, will there be some investment in retraining? Will there be some reticence to change? What are the stakeholder expectations within the businesses? You know, investors, consumers, other stakeholders. Like, you know, they'll be increasingly prioritizing sustainability. So the challenge is, as a profession, we have to as well. You know, how do we then integrate that into the financial reporting? We'll need to develop some expertise in the area. I think the thing with ESG is that we probably, and I'm speaking for myself more than anybody in the room, is that we don't know what we don't know about it, right? So, you know, today's expert in ESG might be tomorrow's expert in MTD, might be next year's expert in robotics. You know, I think ESG is clearly something which isn't going to leave us. So I think the first thing really is to try and understand who of our clients that affects, when it will affect, will it end up affecting everybody, and therefore put a plan in place to offer that as a service line potentially to our customers, or not, right? So I think that the challenge is probably understanding it more than anything, and understand what it means to your business. You know, what it means to a firm in the top 10 might be completely different to what it means to a high street firm, what it means completely to a sole trade one-man firm, you know, but we get swept across as accountants and we're all very different. So, I wonder what it means to you, and then feeling comfortable with that, and understanding how it may offer an opportunity. You know,
Yeah.
if we go back to Natasha's, Natasha, I've not written it down, but I'm sure it was, we love regulation, or we get really excited
Regulation
about
is fun.
regulation. So let's go back to that. You know, let's try and see if we can embrace something that's new in the market and turn that into an opportunity, either for good for the planet or good for our pocket, one of the two.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be,
Absolutely.
I think it's one which is probably a little early to give a real definitive, this is what you must do to make an opportunity out of ESG, because to be honest, sustainability is going to become a fundamental part of all businesses, and is so, but it's an evolution at the moment, really. And I suppose that ultimately will reflect the changing needs of our customers, but we need to know what customers they are. So there's probably a lot more research needs to be done around ESG and how it affects us. But certainly at the top end corporate level, it's a hot topic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back into those skill sets. If you're thinking about things to be doing in 2025 and you don't know about ESG, it's probably one of the skill sets to go develop.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I think there's a good question. Sorry, go on.
Did you want to answer that one before we
No,
go to questions?
I was just going to read it out and maybe put
Yeah.
Natasha on the spot because it's a bit product related, but kind of another good question on the subject of ChatGPT and other global providers bringing out more professions-based specialist AI tools, which are more affordable to some practices. I don't know if that's a question or not, really. The specialist advisory AI tools, do we have, I suppose the question is, do we have products in the roadmap around AI and ChatGPT?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say on the kind of affordability, I think that AI tools is quite a broad term. They could be anything from automating a repetitive process right down to advisory, like actually doing that part of the work for the accountant. And I think that's where I would see the variation in the affordability. There will be some tools on the market that from competitors, from Wolters Kluwer in across our global portfolio, which will be incorporated into the software that you have today. But then there will be some tools that go over and above that may have a higher price point. But I think it totally depends what it is.
Yeah, and we're seeing this, aren't we, globally with some of the tax tools that we have, because as we know, tax is quite a complex subject matter, and it's one that's very close to our heart as tax and accounting division. But we are starting to see AI work within those tools as well, and making information more widely available to people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our industry, in summary, our industry is littered with repeatable process and repetitive tasks, and like everybody needs to get the same number or a different number in the same box. So with the margins being driven down on compliance, with the readiness of data and availability of data, clearly it would make sense for us to look at those repetitive tasks and try to automate them. But AI is more than that, isn't it? You could say broadly that Wolters Kluwer are the keeper of the information in some respects. We've got a huge global information division, which letting AI loose on the content could provide a much cleaner answer. So I don't know, I feel like I waffle there a little bit, but as far as AI is concerned, the use cases, as you said, Natasha, are so broad that it's really sort of easy to fall on the let's find the repetitive task and fix it sword. I think there's loads more that AI can do, and loads more you can train it to do without sounding again like we're saving the world, but you could train it to do some pretty cool stuff rather than just do the dull stuff.
Yeah, and there's the repetitive task, but then there is actually the artificial intelligence. So it providing the guidance, doing not just doing the task, but advising on the task that it's done. So I just filed this tax return, and now I'm going to put together what you should say to the client, the recommendations that you should make, and the advice that you would give to them off the back of that. I think that they're two different use cases.
Yeah, 100%. And that white space almost within the data is what I see it being really good at. Highlight to me all the stuff I missed, or highlight to me all the stuff I may have missed or could do better, and help us grow from that one. So yeah, I hope that's what we implement and use it for, because I think that's the silver bullet, really. Let's get it picking the holes in stuff we could have done better rather than just doing stuff over and over.
So we're coming to the end, a few minutes left. I don't know if there's anything else you want to just throw out there about things that people can focus on in 2025 before we go back through the chat. I think we've answered a lot of the questions as we've gone through.
Yeah, that's good, Lou. I can't see any other questions in the chat particularly. I've enjoyed talking about it today. It's made me think a bit more about how I use AI and ChatGPT at home as well as I use it in the work environment. I think there's tons of opportunities as a provider to this industry, but also I think there's tons of opportunity to adopt that and not be too scared of it. I think with any piece of change, as we said before, it's never really the technology. It's always the adoption and the change curve and how you ready the firm for that. And we'll always have those sort of tech pioneers, and we'll always have those that want to wait until right at the end. And it's probably plotting your spot in that journey and feeling when's right and when there's an opportunity. No, I've really enjoyed that this morning. Appreciate you taking time out of your day, Lou, to put us on the spot.
Chat to you in a different environment.
Yeah.
There's one question, I'll just answer it quickly. So somebody asked about business presence in the US. Yeah, Wolters Kluwer have quite a huge presence within the US. So we can send you some information on how to find that. But if you was to search for Wolters Kluwer just on the web, you would go to our global website, and you can go off into the different jurisdictions and countries that we actually serve and provide.
Yeah, I mean we've got absolutely a huge presence in the US. Probably worth noting, Wolters Kluwer is tax and accounting is just one division of Wolters Kluwer. There's others in health and legal and regulatory and finance and ESG, as we mentioned earlier. But yeah, in the US, it's an incredibly big business in the professional tax preparer and CPA market, as well as probably the smaller end as well.
Yeah. So I think we've answered all the chat. Neil, Natasha, thank you for sharing your insights today. Everyone who's attended, thank you. We'll share the recording with you. We also have a new ebook where we've got more insights on what we've covered in the webinar today. Once you leave the webinar, you'll get a little survey. It'd be really appreciated by the team at Wolters Kluwer if you could just take a few seconds to complete that. But thank you for attending, and we'll see you soon.
Super. Thanks, Lou.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.